Hello, 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 and welcome to this webinar, Parenting Through the Pain. I'm so glad that you decided to join me this evening. This is something that is very near and dear to my heart, helping people navigate through life difficult transitions, such as heartbreak, divorce, and the things that go along with it. So today, we are focusing on parenting. If you join me for any of my other webinars, we've tackled different topics that relate to recovering from heartbreak. And this is no different. We're going to learn how to find confidence, peace, and balance as we navigate through this difficult life transition. I'm Angel Shaw. I'm a licensed professional counselor, supervisor. I'm also an author and a speaker, and my heart is helping people navigate through life's transitions, through life's difficulties, and find peace and confidence and the joy that they seek in their life. So I'm glad that you joined me tonight. Grab some paper, grab a pen, grab something to write on because there are some activities that we're going to be doing, and I want this to be engaging. If you have questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, and there'll be a time for questions and answers at the end. I'm so glad again that you have joined me tonight. So let's get started. Tonight, we are going to cover a few things. I want you to walk away with these specific things that are going to help you move forward into this phase of life that may be challenging for you. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is how divorce and heartbreak affect the parenting system. Okay. How these two major life shifts affect how you parent. When people get married and have children, there's no thoughts of, oh, this is not going to work out. The hope and the ideal situation is to have a two-parent household where both are contributing to the development of their children. The unfortunate thing is that that's not always possible. So we're going to learn how that affects it. We're going to talk about how you can help keep your children feeling safe without pretending. Because a lot of times we feel like we have to be strong. We feel like we have to put on a front or act as if this doesn't affect you. And kids need to see this. Kids need to see how you're managing your emotions because that helps them to know how to handle difficult life things. It helps them to know how to handle going through into different phases of life. So we're going to talk about how to help them feel safe. The other thing we're going to cover is co-parenting, communication, boundaries, conflict reduction. Now, we know that we can't control other people. So if you're in a difficult co-parenting situation and it feels hopeless, we can only manage ourselves. You can only do your part in how you communicate and how you set healthy boundaries to help you be able to navigate and manage it well. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. We also are going to talk about making room for yourself. When we go through heartbreak and divorce, we tend to only be able to take care of others. We tend to help others. We tend to make sure others are okay and not ourselves. So, we're going to talk about how to care for yourself during this process because apart from being mom, apart from being dad, apart from being a spouse, you are yourself. You are an individual. And so we're going to talk about how you can make room and honor yourself and nurture your own needs. And then we're going to talk about creating a practical family plan. How can you move forward with this new normal, with this major change in life to the next chapter? Okay, so I'm glad you're joining. Like I said, grab some paper, pen, something to write with, something to help you participate and engage with the activities that we're going to do tonight. So I want to do a quick check-in. What word do you feel like best describes your parenting right now? Drop it in the chat. What word would you say best describes it? Maybe it's hopeful, maybe you feel exhausted, uncertain, maybe you feel like things are uneasy for you. What would you say is the word that describes your parenting right now? Let's see what you got. Uncertain, uneasy. Yeah. Yeah, so many things are changing, and it can be hard to feel as if you know what you're doing when so many things are changing. You're right. Thank you for sharing that. The second part of this is on a scale of 1 to 10, how emotionally supported and equipped do you feel today? What would you say? 1 being low, 10 being high. How emotionally supported and equipped do you feel today? Do you feel, by that I mean, do you feel like I'm moving in the direction of what I want? I have the support that I need. I'm managing my emotions well. Where would you say that you are today? Okay. 7, see 2. So some low, some high. What do you think would move you 1 point higher this week? What's something that would help you move closer to a 10 if you're on the lower end of that? What's something that, you think would help? Maybe you're unsure, maybe you don't know, but what is something you feel like, you know what, if I just had this or if I could just do this, that would move me a point higher than where I am right now? What do you think that one thing would be? Okay, having some more support, getting a day, taking a break, being able to have a break, getting some downtime. Yeah. So we're going to talk about how we can help get to that place and be able to nurture ourselves and move, if we're on a lower end, moving to the upper higher end of how we are functioning. Okay. So I want to talk about, these are the journeys. Okay. There's two journeys that happen when there is a divorce or a breakup with people who have children. Okay. You've got your child's journey and you've got your journey. Okay. Of course, there could be a third considering your exes, but we're focusing on you and your wellness. So you've got your child's journey and your journey. So with a child's journey, these are the things they may struggle with: the loss of familiar routines, what they used to have as far as both parents in the household, and what that dynamic looked like is now just one parent or in two separate places, or maybe one parent is not as involved or engaged, and so that creates that longing as well. They have questions about their safety or belonging. If they're having to go between two houses, there could be the lack of understanding of what's going on. Where do I, what's happening here? Maybe different rules at one house or different rules at the other house. For some people, when a split happens, people tend to move in with family. So maybe it's not just you and your child or children living by yourselves. You may be living with a family member or someone else for a temporary portion. So that can be an upheaval. Children worry about their conflicts, between both parents. I love mom, I love dad, but I feel torn in the middle. I feel like I have to choose sides, especially a lot of times when you have older kids who can choose and make a decision about where they will live and who they want to stay with primarily. And then their behavior of acting out because they're not able to express. We see this a lot of times with younger kids who they don't know the language to verbalize how they may be feeling. And so you may end up with seeing escalating behaviors or acting out um, in school or with family members, or just the routines that you once had. Now it's all over the place. It's a fight, it's a battle every night to get them to take a bath or to do chores or do certain things because they're feeling uneasy. And then it's your journey. All of the feelings that come with a grief and a loss, the anger, the guilt, the fear. Sometimes it's relief. If you were in an unhealthy, toxic situation, abusive situation, it may be the relief that you're no longer there. The identity shifts, new responsibilities. You were a spouse, and now you're not, especially if this was a long relationship. Maybe your kids are older. And so certain things may not affect them as deeply, but you're shifting now to a new normal. The financial stress, the logistical stress. Okay, now I used to just only do pickups. Now I'm having to do pickups and drop offs for multiple days, or I'm having to get them to sports or get them to their activities when I used to have a partner helping. And then the loss of household income. It was a joint income or a split where I was paying for things, they were paying for things. Now it's all on me. And then also probably one of the most unspoken parts of your journey in going through this is having to parent while you're also healing, having to navigate all of these things, your kids' emotions, making sure they're okay, all of these things, but you're also dealing with your own emotions. And sometimes feeling as if you have to set what you're feeling aside for the sake of your children. So these are the things that can impact what is happening during this part. So, what's important as it relates to your kids and their journey? This is the things that they need most. They need the clear routines and age appropriate information, which comes all in the package of predictability, meaning if their routine has changed in some way, creating a new routine, a new normal when they come to you. If you're doing custody arrangement where it's different possession times, when what happens when they come back to your house? What happens? What do they do? What are the steps that they have to do? And sharing information with them that's age appropriate. When children are asking questions, you can be honest, because they're going to have questions about what is happening and what is age appropriate for them. Of course, is depending on how old your kids are and their maturity level of what they can have. And so that requires you to be emotionally calm to where you can answer certain questions or say, I can't answer that for you right now. We're still figuring that out and being honest with them as much as possible. Okay. The other thing they need is permission to be able to love both parents without feeling guilt. There should not be this tug of war with, one parent is, pulling on me, the other parent's pulling on me, and it feels to them like a battle and they're caught in the middle. Children need to know that they can equally love both parents, even though the picture of what they're used to looks different. So that's important. Protection, keeping them, this goes along with keeping them out of the middle, knowing that they are not going to be in the midst of the conflict. They are not going to be the go-between, both parents relaying information, those type of things. Keep them out of that part. That protects them and their emotions and as they're adjusting to this new normal. They also need your presence. They need the calming, nurturing part of you that, even in the small things, helps them stay connected to their caregiver and to know that they are still loved, that they are still cared for, even though things may not look how they used to. They need to know that they are still being cared for. Okay. And the other thing that kids need most is reassurance, letting them know that they are loved, that there's nothing that they did wrong, that this is between me and your mom and your dad. This is between us, adult issues. This has nothing to do with you. We will always be here for you. We love you. We're here to support you. You can come to us. That is the reassurance that they need as their world is changing, because as many times as I've heard parents stay together for the sake of their children, what kids need most is that nurturing, stable, healthy, loving environment. And sometimes that's not with both parents together. And there is the myth that, oh, it's better. We don't want the household to be broken by us being apart. But the reality is, it's already broken. You're just still in the same place. And it's far more damaging for kids to be in that environment versus seeing both of their parents separate, but yet healthy and happy and nurturing them. Okay. Because kids are resilient. They are okay when we show them that we are okay and thriving in life. Okay. So I want you to think about this time, because we talked about one of the ways that we can sometimes notice when kids are not doing okay or when things are affecting them and they're not communicating that. So I want you to think about some of the behaviors maybe that you've seen with your children. Now, these aren't always negative behaviors. Sometimes kids show that they are well adjusted. Sometimes they show that they're happier. Sometimes they show that they're more calm and less anxious, because one parent may have been very conflictual and they may have created an environment that felt unsafe. And so the child may have always been in a state of anxiety. So you probably notice those behaviors. But now that the the separation has happened, you may notice them seeming more relaxed, more engaged, more open. Or these can be negative behaviors where you see them acting out. They're in school, they're being more combative with you. It's a struggle every day to get them up and get them to do the things that they do. So I want you to consider this. I want you to think of one recent behavior that you've seen in your kid that has been difficult. Get that in your mind. What is a recent behavior that you've seen in your child that you feel like has been especially difficult lately? Okay. Maybe one, maybe a couple that you've noticed that just has been difficult for you to navigate. Again, it may not be a behavior as far as acting out and being disrespectful and that. It just may mean they're just overly emotional too. That can be a difficult situation to be in because you're trying to figure out how to help them, how to support them in the way that they need. So consider this, have that in your mind. Ask yourself, instead of, okay, I think our focus is always, how do I stop this behavior? I want them to stop doing this. I want them to stop behaving this way. But instead, ask what might be the feeling underneath, because kids don't always have the language to express themselves with their words, so they show it in their behavior. So instead of being reactive, so this requires, us as adults to have be able to regulate our emotions so that we are not overreacting to certain things, or that we are not pushing our emotions onto our child and causing things to escalate, but really seeking to see what might be the feeling underneath this. This is what they're showing, this is how they're acting, but what really may be happening underneath this? What may be what they're truly feeling? Okay. What might my child be trying to communicate? So that requires taking a step back, and evaluating the behavior, especially if it's something that is out of their norm or out of their ordinary behavior. Okay. And then what boundary and reassurance could you offer? Because even when kids act out, and even when they're going through difficult life things and transitions that come along with this, doesn't mean they don't have consequences. It doesn't mean that you don't hold them to expectations and standards in their behavior. This just helps to really clearly see what's happening underneath there to better address it and determine there's maybe a new boundary that I need to set, or I need to reassure them that everything is okay. I know you're hurting right now. You're welcome to have the space to express yourself, but we're going to do this in a healthy way. Okay. You can be angry, but this is how a better way that we're going to work to express this anger, and teaching them that. Okay. So think about that situation, the behavior that's been especially difficult, and then how you think that, I can approach this a little bit different this time so that I'm not allowing the behavior to escalate. And when that happens, now you are more frazzled and out of sorts, and it's now inflicting and encroaching upon your ability to heal through that as well. So think about that. So when we are parenting and we're trying to um, correct our kids, and it's not from a calm place, but it's an immediate reaction, that's an indication that there's some inner work that we need to do for ourselves, because kids will do things. And in the moment, you have to grab yourself and catch yourself because you recognize these are kids. And I'm angry. And so disciplining and correcting children from the place of anger never has the reaction that you want. It usually creates an exponentially greater or problemsome situation. So these are some cues that, I may be activated here. I may need to take some time before I address this behavior. Again, you want to make sure this is a safe situation. They're not putting themselves or someone else in danger. But when you are calm, you're more able to better understand the behavior going on and how you can work in this. So sometimes it may be we over explain, you give them too much information, or it may be you shut down and you're not answering anything with them. Okay. Correcting the behavior before connecting. Like I said, kids don't know how to all the time express in words what they're saying, so their behavior tells the story. So instead of being quick to correct whatever the behavior, again, we're not talking about safe, dangerous situations they may be putting themselves in, but looking for the connection point to understand what may be the reason for this behavior before coming back to correct it. Okay. Taking a child's reaction personally, hearing your child say, I hate you, or I wish you weren't my mom, I wish you weren't my dad, or I don't want to live with you, or those type of things, it's hurtful. We're humans. We're people. Things affect us, especially if you know you've done your best with your children and you've done all that you can to create a good environment for them. And this is just an unfortunate situation that's happening. It can be very hurtful, but don't let that cause you to react negatively, okay, or responding from fear, guilt, or anger. Okay, these are the signs that we become activated and we're not regulating our own emotions so that we're able to really communicate and meet the needs of our children and help them because they're watching us. So if that's how we respond to their behavior and we respond quickly, then that's how they learn to do that with other people. So we also have to work on regulating our own emotions in those difficult moments. Okay. So here's a steadier way to help you to regulate your emotion. One, when you feel that your emotions are overloaded, just pause and observe in your body. Okay, my heart is pounding, my palms are sweaty, my head hurts, whatever it is that's going on. Just notice what's happening in your body. Okay, then name the emotion. Figure out what this emotion is that you're feeling. Okay, then regulate. Regulate your emotion before. So that may mean doing something self-soothing to help calm you before reacting. Okay, so after you've done that, after you've gotten to a more calm space, now you can connect. Now you can clarify whatever the expectation is, whatever the request was, and then set the boundary. Because again, even though your children may be going through a hard time, their emotions are all over the place, there still is expectations that they have to follow. There still are rules and responsibilities that they have. So they don't get a pass from those things. So you also don't want to take it to the extreme and be overly permissive of everything they do and just make it, oh, I know they're struggling with this separation, they're struggling with this, so I'm just going to allow them to behave whatever kind of way because that also doesn't teach them how to manage and navigate their difficult emotions either. So this is a good formula when you feel emotionally dysregulated because of something your child has done, because of their behavior, because they're acting out, because their behavior is shifting due to the what's changing in their life. You can follow these steps. Just pause, notice your body, name whatever the emotion, whatever it is that you're feeling that's causing you to react, and then regulate yourself. Self-soothe, regulate yourself when it's possible. Again, we're talking if you're in a dangerous situation about to run into the street or whatever, that's something different. But if you're at home, they're having a meltdown and you're frustrated and all that, give yourself some space and then seek to connect. What's going on, underneath what I'm seeing? Clarify the expectation and then set the boundary with them. Okay. Okay. Another strategy for you to use is this 90-second reset. So this is what during that time where we are regulating our emotions, during the time where you're self-soothing, this is a way to do that. So planting both feet on your floor, this is a grounding exercise that helps you to calm your emotions. So if you ever experience anxiety, you're familiar with grounding skills. They help reorient you to the present so that your emotional levels can reduce so that you're able to more appropriately deal with whatever the struggle may be. So planting both feet on your floor, Take a slow inhale and longer exhale. Okay. Name what it is that you're feeling. That was one of the steps before was identifying what the feeling is. So name the feeling that you're feeling and ask, what does this require from me as a parent? So this is all how you are resetting and emotionally regulating yourself before you go to connect with the child, redirect the behavior, set the boundary. Okay. And choose one calm sentence before continuing the conversation. Okay. It may be my child is struggling with this change, but he still has to follow the rules and still has to be respectful. Okay, whatever that calm sentence it is that you're telling yourself. So, this is the process when you're taking that step away to be able to reorient yourself to what is happening. This is a good reset for you to be able to do so that you have the space to do that. Okay, so take the time in doing that. Okay. So I want to talk about the other piece of this. Okay. As I said at the beginning, that we can only control ourselves. We can't manage the other parents' actions and what they are or not doing. We can't. We can only control ourselves. So you may be in a difficult co-parenting situation where it's very conflictual, very combative. It is not what you would hope it would be. Of course, the ideal situation is that everybody gets along and that we could at least be friends and be at peace. Um, the unfortunate reality is that's not a lot of people's story. And so you have to follow some different steps in navigating it so that you don't lose yourself. So the goal is not friendship or agreement. That is not the end goal necessarily in co-parenting. That is a lovely ideal, for people who are able to have that type of co-parenting relationship. I know you may have heard people who they travel together or as a family or they do holidays together, still birthdays together. They're able to do that because they put their own feelings aside or still remain friends when they realize that their relationship romantically wasn't working, but they still could have some level of friendship. That is an ideal situation, but it's not most people's reality. So the goal is just creating a workable relationship that's centered around what's best for your child. That is the goal. It's not about us and how we feel, how I feel about you, how you feel about me, but what is best for our child. And the best thing for our child, and we talked about on a previous, at the beginning, what the main basic needs of the children are, and that is the reassurance, the protection. All of those things help a child to feel safe and help them in navigating this difficult situation. So being focused on a child's needs is always going to be what's most important. Okay. So aiming for clear, brief, child-focused communication. Okay. If this is especially important, if there is some conflictual relationship there, if it's not about the children, then we don't need to talk about anything. Or if you're still in the process of separating and divorcing, it may be some logistical or financial things or those type of things that you may have to discuss as well. But it should be very focused. Okay. That helps to minimize any opportunity for anyone to feel triggered, any emotions to arise that are going to be counterproductive to a healthy co-parenting. Okay. So when sometimes cooperative co-parenting is just even at that basic level may not be the situation that you're in. So that requires usually more court appointed, structured, or what's considered a parallel approach. Parallel means we each have our own separate things we're doing, as it relates to school. You have the teacher's email and the information. The teacher sends you all of the calendar and all the things. They send me all the calendar and all the things. So we're not having to interact as it relates to communicating certain things. We each have our own separate thing that we're doing. That works for some parents when they just cannot co-parent. They end up parallel parenting. So, separate but equal type of situation. So that may be what may have to happen to help reduce the conflict for your children. Okay. And of course, if there's safety issues, then that's where, professional legal, those type of situations may come into play. If you're having to go to court, if you know somebody's just being unnecessarily difficult, having someone advocate on your behalf is always going to be a better situation to keep you from having to be combative with your ex. And also, if you're not communicating in a way that is documented, then that also would be a change. We're either communicating via text or email. We're not having phone conversations. Text me or email me. And even when I've had clients where that's what they said, but the person still was calling them, you have the option to allow or not allow that by answering versus not answering the phone. If that's the boundary you set, if they call, you don't have to answer the phone because that's crossing the boundary you set. Please communicate with me via text or email. So those are also things that we have to make sure that we are focused on as well. So a filter for any type of communication that you do send via email and via text, is this necessary? Okay, meaning is this information that I need them to know? Okay, is this about the child? Okay, is this pertinent information I need to know? Doctor appointment, what the teacher said, what the result of the doctor visit was, if there's medication or something that your child is taking, any of those type of things is important. Sorry, I lost my ear. Okay. So any of those type of information is important. Okay. Is this the facts versus how I'm feeling? Okay. That can get very muddy for a lot of people because especially if it's something that's recent or you're feeling overly frustrated with the other parent and how they're communicating or things that they're not doing that they've agreed to do, then it can trigger a lot of negative emotions. And so when you communicate, it can sound very accusatory. So stick to the facts. You know, this is what is happening. This is what I need. Okay. And I'm going to show you on the next step, kind of the formula for that. And is there a clear request or next step? Okay. Are you just expressing your disappointment or frustration with something that they've done, or are you actually making a request? Okay. Can you drop them off on time, please? We have whatever scheduled, and whatever the next step is. So keeping it in that formula. So this is the structure. State the relevant information. You have to know, okay, what is it that I need here? Make the request and then let that be it without expressing any emotions, disappointment, bringing up old stuff. This is what you always do. This is what, all of that is within your control to keep a relationship from being contentious. Again, we can't control the other person. What they do, how they communicate, what they say, all we can control is ourselves and how we communicate and how we participate in this co-parenting structure, which means sometimes setting the boundaries of what you allow and choosing and being very mindful of how you communicate certain things with them. Okay. Okay. So here are some boundaries that protect your peace. Okay. We talk about boundaries all the time. I'm sure you heard that word over and used over and over again. Boundaries, 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 boundaries. We can say boundaries to death. But boundaries really all it is very basic. They just show how much access you allow someone to you. That's what it is. Think about a wall. Okay. How much access do you get, if this wall is up here? Okay. That is what boundaries do. They are for your protection. The problem is people don't like boundaries because they don't get the access to you that they want. But they are necessary for us to be able to keep peace in our life, okay, and move forward in life in healthy ways. So they are necessary. So sometimes we can set the boundaries, but we don't uphold them. And that is the important piece. So if you struggle with setting boundaries, if you struggle with that, it's not always about communicating the boundary, it's upholding it because we don't want to deal with the consequences of that person's anger. or whatever, however they may react to the boundary. So here are some suggestions. Keeping, again, the communication focused on parenting, the logistics, and the child's needs. If things have been final, you're not having to separate any assets or businesses or finance or anything like that. All you have to talk about is your children, and not other things. Keep it focused. Make sure that it's a consistent communication when possible. So it may be, depending on whatever your arrangement may be, whether it's typical standard custody, first, third, fifth weekends, or 50-50 split, or however your arrangement may be, keep your consistent communication channel, text, email. Again, that's for more contentious situations. If you and your co-parent have a healthy relationship to where you can talk on the phone and share information and it not be contentious, then that's great. Okay. Avoid using the children as messengers, investigators, or emotional supporters. Okay. I see this a lot of times with older kids where a parent may, cry or, be overly emotional with them, talking about how they're feeling, which puts the child in an unnatural, unhealthy position to try to be your therapist instead of allowing them to be able to be children and to feel what they feel and deal with their own things. So avoid using them as a middleman. Okay. Decide what requires a response and what does not. Again, everything that somebody says, you don't have to respond because some things may be targeted or they're trying to get to you in a certain way. So if it's not something that's about the children that needs a direct response, let it ride. Okay. Set limits on disrespectful communication. So you have a right to say, we can talk about this, but please don't talk to me that way. Or if you continue to talk to me this way, I'm going to hang up or block you or whatever it is that needs to happen to reinforce that boundary. So you don't have to, again, it's what you allow. So we don't have to allow disrespectful communication, when we're trying to do what's in the best interest of our children. Okay. And remember, a boundary describes what you will do, not how you control the other person. So these are about you, what's best for you. And it can come off to the other parent as control sometimes. But just like you have a right to set whatever things that you need, so do they. And sometimes there may have to be some compromise in the middle there, but you have a right to manage and navigate your own emotions and what's going to help you to move through this, and not necessarily be controlling of the other parent. So think about what boundary you may need to set. Maybe you've been allowing too much free willing going on. There's no structure. That can happen when it's just they can come and go. The other parent can come and go, pick the kids whenever they want to. They can see the kids whenever they want to. There's no structure. There's no set times, and that can be an issue here with not maintaining your peace because there's no clear cut boundaries. Okay, the kids go to bed at 8:30. Please don't call them after 8:30, or after 8 o'clock because they're getting ready for bed because they have school, and that is a clear boundary. If they choose to call after that, then they're choosing not to speak to their children because you set what is in the best interest of their children because they need sleep and rest to be able to function the next day. So those are things that you have to think through. What's one thing that I've been kind of a little loose with that I may need to tighten up this week? Yeah, so consider that. So, what happens when, your children get caught in the middle? We've talked about how important it is to keep them outside of that. Sometimes children feel a responsibility to be in the middle, whether you put them there or not. So, one thing you can do to help in pulling them out of that position is not asking them to choose sides or talk about what's happening at the other household. What's happening here at my house, is what's happening here at my house. I don't need to know what's happening at your mom or your dad's house. I don't need to know about that. You don't have to feel obligated to, to answer questions about what's happening over here. So set that boundary with your kids. Validate their feelings. So if they're expressing, I feel this way, okay, well, tell me more about that. Why are you feeling that? And don't allow your feelings to seep into their feelings. Okay. They're entitled to feel how they feel, but don't, don't add on to it by saying, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, he does that. She does that. They do. Allow your children to determine for themselves the relationship with their other parent. Okay. Which leads to the next one. Avoid criticizing the other parent in front of your child. Okay. Children are very intuitive. They get to an age where they see the reality. Okay. You don't need to say mom or dad is unreliable. They keep promising to pick you up and they don't. The child will see that. Every Friday when their mom's supposed to get them, they don't. Over time, they begin to realize, okay, you're not keeping your word. So you don't ever have to disparage the other parent. Kids figure things out for themselves. They see who's nurturing them, they see who's loving them, they see where their support is. Okay. Using neutral language. So, things are different at each place, and that's okay. What you do here may not be what you do at mom's or dad's, and that's okay. But this is what the expectation is here. Is it something about this or that you don't like? We can talk about it, but that is opening the door to allow them to express their feelings and validate what they're feeling, but still make that separation that they don't have to choose. Okay. And make room for them having mixed feelings. Some of them may enjoy, again, the freedom and the peace that they may have now with everybody in separate households, but still miss some of the traditional things of you all maybe having dinner together or spending holidays together. And now they have a different holiday one place, a different holiday another place. So they may have some mixed feelings about feeling glad that y'all aren't together anymore because they didn't want, y'all kept fighting and they didn't want to hear you fighting. So they may be happy about that, but still miss being able to see their other parent every day or being able to have that family unit. So both of those can coexist and be equal in their mind. So just give them the space to do that, to feel that. Okay. So I now want to talk about you as a person because we get lost so much in making sure our kids are okay because that's what you're supposed to do as a parent. You're supposed to make sure your kids are okay. You put yourself on the back burner, you do whatever for your kids, and we don't do anything for ourselves. The best thing you can do for your kids is take care of you because that then makes you the best mom that they need to be, that they need you to be. So you have to take care of you. So, how do you take care of you when you've gone through this huge shift? You're trying to hold it together. You're trying to manage and navigate new schedules, new routines, work, cook, do all of the house, do all of the load of everything, and not really realizing who you are. So, how do you get back to that? Here's just a few things. Reconnect with your values. Take some time to reevaluate what is it that I value now? Because when you were in a relationship, it was a joint effort. It was a joint dream, a joint plan for a future. Now that has changed. So, what is it now that you value? What is it now that you are passionate about? What is it now that you want for your life? Okay. Create routines that are now for you, that work for you. It's you when your kids are there, it's you and the kids. When it's just you, it's just you. What routines can you create for yourself that keep you functioning in those ways that you need? So create those routines. Accept support. Community is so important when you're going through a heartbreak and life transition. You need people, whether it's family, friends, church community, whatever it may be, social group that you have where you can be you and not be parent, not be spouse, but you can just be you. And it's not always, I think a lot of times people don't want to be a burden to their family or friends. They don't want have to keep talking about the same thing with them over and over again. And it's not even about having somebody to talk to about. That's what therapy is for. It's not about having somebody to talk to. It's having someone to remind you that you're still a person. You still have interests and hobbies and activities outside of the kids and family life and all of that. So it's just, hey, I want to go to a movie or I want to go on this hike or try this new restaurant. and do something fun that helps you remember and connect to that part of you that you may not have been connected to for so long. And make space for joy that's not tied to parenting. What do you do for you that has nothing to do with your kids or anybody else? What is it that you do that's just for you? It's not because I'm making this, I'm crafting, but I'm not crafting to make something for somebody else. I just do it because I enjoy it and I do it for myself. What is it that you do just for you that is not tied to anything else? That's how you can begin to really reestablish who you are in this new phase of life. Because even though things are changing, there's still so much hope for a future, even though it doesn't feel that way sometimes. Okay. So I want you to do, again, this is another activity I have for you. Um, get a piece of paper, get something to write with, something you can doodle on, or you can screenshot it and do it later. But I want you to draw 3 circles. Okay. One circle, write my child, next circle, co-parenting, and then the third, me. So draw these three circles. My child, my co-parenting, and me. Okay. Inside each one, I want you to write one thing that you feel like is currently taking your energy. What thing do you feel is draining you? What thing that is most difficult for you in doing from each of those sections? So, what thing with your child is draining you, your energy? What thing about the co-parenting situation is draining your energy? And what thing about yourself, your own life, just you individually, that you feel like is taking your energy or taking a lot of your time? Mm, yeah. Teens they like to say no. Definitely like to say no. And a lot of these things are different at the different stages. If you have little kids versus adolescents, teenagers, or even adult kids sometimes, are still very dependent on you as a parent. Okay. Then I want you to write one thing that would create more stability in each of those areas. So you identify the one thing that's currently taking your energy. What is one thing that you feel like would create more stability with dealing with your children, with the co-parenting, and then within your own self? What's one thing that you feel would create some more stability and help you to feel a little bit more balanced? What is that one thing? And then I want you to pick, okay, which one of these actions that you can take in either category, whether it's your child, your co-parenting, or yourself. What is one action you can realistically take in the next week? The thing you said, okay, this one thing would create some more stability in each of these areas. Which one of those do you want to focus on? Because it's not about everything being perfectly balanced. It's just being intentional with identifying this is taking my energy and I want to do something different. Now, sometimes when life is going through this shift, we try to keep up with the things that we were doing before, which is sapping our energy instead of recognizing I can't do this in this season. I may have to let some things go, some obligations go. Kids may have to let some activities go. Everybody can do one. We can all do two and three. What thing can you do to help you in um, being able to create more stability and restructure how you're functioning in your life? We want our kids to be able to have all the experience and do all the things, but there's also teaching them how to prioritize. We can't always do everything. So we need to prioritize what is most important, what we want to do most right now. So take some time to consider that and make a commitment to take one action in the next week that's going to help you. Okay. We a lot of times walk in the shame and the guilt of creating what we consider a broken family for our children and feeling as if they won't recover or feeling the guilt of, my child's going to be in therapy. They're going to, always be struggling, or now I got to overcompensate. That is the guilt of a situation that you actually made a choice to change versus have them in an unhealthy situation. So instead of living in the guilt, we can reframe that into a way that makes us responsible for the now. I know what's changed. This is what I can offer. And my child can feel how they feel and they still can be okay. They will be resilient. So moving out of the guilt, the disappointment, the frustration of having your kids in this situation and reframing it to the responsibility that I have now, not just for their healing and growth, but also my own, and knowing that they will be okay because I'm doing the things, I'm modeling the things, and allowing them to feel and to move through this in a healthy way as well. Okay. So, how do you build this new family rhythm? Things have changed, things have shifted, and now we have to create a new normal because what we were doing, we can't keep doing anymore because it's not sustainable, or it becomes too overwhelming to keep trying to do certain things. So now, every time my child is with me, I've got to create a new rhythm for them. So, how can you do that? First, just choose a couple routines that you can create predictability. It could be their bedtime routine, whenever you get them, or whenever they come back from being gone from you, whether it's a weekly check in over dinner, bed, whatever it is that you can focus on one or two things. It doesn't have to be the whole day and everything they're doing. It could be just one thing, one or two routines that you can create some predictability with them that's going to help things flow better in your household. Okay. Now it's the time to create new traditions. Maybe we used to do this for the holidays as a family, and now it's just the two of us or the three of us or however many, children you have. And I don't get you every holiday, so we get to do something special. Get the kids involved. What do you want to do? Okay. Schedule time to connect, not just to do tasks. So that may mean, okay, let's go out to the park for the weekend. Or let's go do something fun together because that helps connect you to your children and be more in tune with how they're feeling, what's going on, and them seeing that we still have life and we're still living. It's not just about us doing chores or us going to school or us, coming home and those things and cleaning. It's about being able to enjoy our life too. Okay. Build your support team, friends, family, um, children's coach, therapist if needed. Do that. And then just review. If things, okay, let me do this for a couple weeks. I'm going to create a couple new routines and then let's see what may be working or what may not be working. And you can adjust as necessary. Mhm. Okay. Now, the plan for you. Okay. That's what's helpful for the family and the family dynamic. What about you? These are the things I want you to consider. How you can be more at peace with what's going on. Completing these sentences. When I feel triggered, I will. What can you do differently? We talked about how to do the 90-second reset, the grounding skills. What can you do? A co parenting boundary I need to strengthen is maybe, okay, I said, don't call me, text me. They call, I'm not going to answer. Okay. One way I will intentionally connect with my child. This could be one of those rituals at bedtime or at dinner or on the way to school, even. Okay. One thing I will do for myself without guilt is that parental guilt is very strong, but you deserve to experience some joy and nurture yourself. So, what's one thing that you can do for you that's not attached to anybody else? Okay. And one person or resource I can reach out to for support is, okay, this is your peace plan. This is your plan to create more peace in your life. so that you're able to this is what true strength is, being able to go through difficult life things and rebound and recover. It doesn't mean I can't show emotions. It doesn't mean that I got to hold it together and act like nothing's wrong. Strength means I've gone through one of the hardest things in life and I'm moving through it in a healthy way. Mhm. How do you know if you or your child may need some additional support? Okay. So pay attention to any changes that you're noticing. Their sleep. Maybe they're not sleeping or they're waking up in the night. Bedwetting regression. Their teachers reporting that they're not focused. In school, you notice them being more aggressive or they just are to themselves or not talking like they used to. Okay. There's conflict between you and the other parent and the child seems to be in the middle. That's some time to seek some support. You feel overwhelmed, or is finding it difficult to regulate yourself as it relates to dealing with parenting. Okay. Any grief, anxiety, depression that is causing difficulties for you to function every day. Okay. And of course, anything involving any safety, abuse, control, those type of things, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the specialized support. So really just paying attention. Like I said, kids' behavior tells more of a story than their words. So pay attention. I even suggest if this is a new separation, a new divorce, or your kids are at a new school, they may be mentioning to the school counselor, hey, his mom and I, his dad and I are going through a divorce. If you could just check in with him, or, if he may need to talk, that's also a resource, while they're at school. Okay. So, in summary, a couple things I want you to remember here is that consistency and connection are so much more important than trying to be the perfect parent or do everything right. Your children will remember how they feel when they're with you, and that comes from the consistency and the relationship you build with them. Okay. Knowing how to regulate yourself is how you can better respond to those difficult parenting moments because there will be. Your children will try you at every turn. They will, challenge you, especially as they age, but regulating yourself and learning how to do that is important. Okay. Effective co-parenting, you have to have boundaries and you have to keep your children as the center of the communication. Okay. And you are important. It's your life that you're also rebuilding. Okay, you're not just the house manager. You're not just the shuttle and the worker bee. You also have to take care of you because you deserve that as well. Okay? And it's the small things we do. It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul of everything that has been going on, but there can be some small things that you do daily to create that peaceful environment for you. Okay? Okay. Any reflections or questions? Thank you all for being here tonight, for soaking in this information. I hope that you grabbed something that was helpful for you. Feel free to type in the chat if there's some question that you have or reflection that you have about something that was shared, something that you're more curious about, something that you may be struggling with and that you need more support with. Please feel free to share that in the chat as I move forward. You can still do that. I am hosting another every month. I'm doing these webinars every third Tuesday of the month. Next month in September on the 15th, we're talking about how to navigate that seasonal mood changes. Okay. The holidays are approaching. For a lot of people, the fall tends to be a rougher season because you're going into all those holidays. And I'm going to do a webinar specifically about how navigating the holidays in November. But this is talking about the seasons change. We're moving into the fall. And with these changing, of the season, our mood can tend to change too. So kids are in school, they're, navigating back into school life. So that'll be a good time to connect with me during that time. Okay. If you are in Texas, I am a Texas-based licensed therapist. So if you are looking for therapy services, please reach out. If you're not in Texas, I still can work with you through coaching services. If you are interested in having a coaching journey, I have packages available to help give you that support that you need in navigating through that as well. So you can reach out. My contact information is right there. This is just more information about my coaching services, a book that I've written specifically to help people in navigating divorce, using coupling my own experiences with also some clinical expertise as well. So grab a copy of that if you haven't already, to help kind of guide you through that. And then let's stay connected. These are all my contact information, my email, office number, social media. You can follow me as well. I give weekly encouragements through my social media platforms, YouTube, and all of those things. So feel free to stay connected with me using any of that as well. You can scan that QR code. Okay, I'm seeing question here. How can I get a better co-parenting results with a non-compliant ex spouse? This is, when we talked about the boundaries, this is very key for that. Okay. And I don't know what way they're being non-compliant is this has to do with things that they have agreed to do as far as like financial support or um the custody and possession times or whatever it may be. But we can't control what the other person is doing. And it's sad and it's unfortunate because the kids lose. When the other parent isn't involved and isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, the kids lose out. It's not even about, us as adults, it's the kids that lose out on that. So being very clear in what you desire, but also recognizing that person may or may not do that. And in that case, what is going to be the boundary? And what is going to be the upholding of that boundary if they cross it? If they're supposed to pick up, their child on certain days and they're always backing out at the last minute. And I think for a lot of women, it's keeping you from being able to live life and enjoy and do things because you have your kids with you all the time. So that may mean, okay, I need to build some relationships with other people to have some childcare that is not dependent on him. And so you have to sometimes it causes you to be a little bit more creative and figure out how if they're not willing to do their part as a parent, I can't control that. I can only control what I do and the support that I gather for myself to help me in navigating this. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope that you will register for the next session and I will see you next time.